Well, what if you built a $1 billion circular spaceship, greenest office building on the planet, high-tech super hive, and nobody came? That seems to be the problem that Apple is having these days. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and this is your right angle on Apple having a bit of a problem with the workforce that they've done so much to create. It turns out, guys, that this fabulous, incredible, unbelievable office space that Apple built in Cupertino costs so much money and is the greenest facility on the planet, apparently, is not quite as attractive to its employees as working out of their individual apartments at home. And unfortunately, since these are no longer the days of, IBM, where IBM would say, well, this is where the office is, and if you don't want to come, then that's fine. You can stay home and we won't pay you. But that's not what's happening at Apple. At Apple, the people who are the employees of the company, the ones who are receiving the paychecks, are saying, we don't want to come back, and we want you to still pay us. For example, here's a quote that basically went around in a letter addressed to the management at Apple. See if you can detect the slightest hint of entitlement in this letter from the employees to their employer. Over the last year, we often felt not just unheard, but at times actively ignored. Messages like, we know many of you are eager to reconnect in person with your colleagues back at the office, with no messaging acknowledging that there are directly contradictory feelings amongst us, feels dismissive and invalidating. Not only do many of us already feel well connected with our colleagues worldwide, but better connected now more than ever. We've come to look forward to working as we are now without the daily need to return to the office. It feels like there's a disconnect between how the executive team thinks about remote location flexible work and the lived experiences of many of Apple's employees. Steve, it feels like there's a disconnect between what the management of the company wants and what the employees want to do. If you're the president of Apple, known for your overwhelming virtue in the face of all kinds of global injustice, how do you deal with this disconnect?
Oh, man. Well, I don't know what Tim Cook's going to do. I know what I'd do. I would like to find the person who wrote that letter and use that language. And I'd like to grab him by the lapels like Vito Corleone did Tommy Fontaine in that scene in The Godfather and say, you can act like a man, and slap him in the face. Wow.
Good luck with that.
Wow. Yeah, right.
Because he doesn't have any lapels.
Good. That's as good a fig leaf as I can come up with. Yeah, that's an excellent idea.
I just, this language of caring or wokeness or whatever you want to call it just makes
it's just entitlement.
gag.
We don't want to come back to work. We like working from home, and we feel like you management people who are writing our checks have there's a sense of emotional disconnect. We don't feel validated by you asking us to come back to work.
Yeah.
There you go. That's more along the lines of what I was thinking.
You can act like a man. I follow Apple closely, even long before I started buying Apple gear. Well, gosh, that's been going on like 14, 15, 16 years now. I've always been fascinated by them as a company because even though they're often slapworthy or frustrating, Apple has always been a very interesting company to watch. And that was during Steve Jobs, in between Steve Jobs coming back, and now even in the Tim Cook era. It's an interesting company. And I know a little bit about the Spaceship, the Apple Park ring-shaped headquarters. When Jobs and Johnny Ive designed this building, it was designed on purpose to increase people's chances from different departments of bumping into one another, because what Jobs found was that these accidental meetings increase collaboration and innovation within the company. And Apple Park is designed to increase the odds of that kind of thing happening. And Jobs also believed in taking long walks and talking about ideas for new products. And Apple Park is also designed to encourage that kind of a thing. So it's sort of Steve Jobs' hippy-dippy office building. But it's worked. That kind of thing worked for Apple when they were spread out, and it's supposed to work even better in this office building. So I suspect Tim Cook is going to be sending out a lot of pink notes saying, well, if you can't work the Apple way, we'll hit the highway.
I bet it doesn't.
That said, This isn't true of every company. Not every company is Apple. Not every company needs to work in this way. I'm not going to name any names here because I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but I know some very closely who works for a very large corporation that hasn't had anybody in the office hardly for the last year and a half. And we all know why. And some people are eager to come back and other people are not eager to come back. And I will bet you this company is not going to fire a lot of people, but I think they're going to lose some very good people who became not just as productive working from home, but more productive working at home because they didn't have to deal with all the nuisances that come with working in an office. And there are a lot of nuisances with working in an office, as I recall from way long ago. I've been working at home for like 20 years now or more. So there is going to be some fundamental change in how big companies work. I think there's going to be a ongoing depression in office space. It's just, I don't think the demand is going to come back the way it did because people found they were happier working at home. And I think some smart managers are going to figure out, if they haven't already, that people can be just or more productive working from home. And we're going to see changes.
Let me ask you a quick follow-up on that,
Sure.
just Steve. We have here in the BillWhittle.com Enterprises skyscraper here in Los Angeles, we have obviously hundreds of floors of employees.
Clearly.
But we do manage to maintain this particular studio. And the reason I maintain this studio, despite the fact that virtually all of the work I do is done on one desk with a small camera, is because I find I am infinitely less productive when I'm at home. Yeah. Infinitely less productive. You want to comment on that? Because this idea, we're so much more productive when we're home. That may be true for some people, but I know for a certain fact it's not true for all people. But just about everybody would rather work from home than work from the office.
And the thing is, some people can and some people can't. There's going to have to be some renegotiation between workers and employers on this very thing. Give you another example. My wife works from home a lot, even pre-pandemic. And one of the reasons she likes to do that is because people don't come to her desk and waste her time. She can do an 8-hour workday in about 4 hours because of this lack of time wasting. This is not true for everybody. Some people need that, and that's fine. But I think the demand for office space is going to shrink because it is not true for everybody. And I don't know about you, Bill, but I don't believe in one size fits all.
I do if it's my size.
You do you.
Scott, as it turns out, it's not just high-tech mega giants like Apple with this problem. Turns out corner restaurants have the problem too. During the 18 months of lockdown that we've dealt with in California here, I got a chance to spend some time talking with a guy who's just a chicken wing place I like to go to, but makes me comfortable. We've had a chance to talk during the entire 18 months. We got a chance to talk when they were open, then they were closed, then they were open again, then they were half open, then they were closed again. All of this. And I've had a chance to chat with them every now and then. So finally, just a few days ago, I said, man, it looks like we're coming out of this thing. It looks like even in California, they're not going to be able to keep this up much longer. And he said, yeah, but we can't hire anybody. We can't find people that want to come to work. And I don't know whether that's a result of people being paid enough in terms of welfare benefits to stay home. There's certainly some cases where people are getting as much money or more money to stay home and do nothing than they are to go to work, at least in a low-paying job. What do you think about this overall labor shortage across the spectrum? And it seems to be mostly concentrated among younger employees.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the demographics break out for that, but if I were in Tim Cook's position, for example, or the owner of this restaurant, I have a bit of a contrarian view on this because I think that your number one customers in any business are the people that you pay to execute that business, your employees.
Agreed. That's your number one asset.
So that's your number one customer. And so if Tim Cook is hearing substantial rumblings in his organization from people who are saying, hey, look, we were being just as productive without having to come to the spaceship to do this, I think that's worth listening to and evaluating on a business metric basis and saying, okay, what is it about coming to this building that we spent billions of dollars on that makes people say, I'd rather be at home? Is it possible that all the things we thought people wanted are not things that people want? Is it possible that our little utopian fantasy about how people are going to bump into each other in this magnificent edifice or wandering around the park is somehow not playing out the way we thought it was going to? Or do we need to do a better job educating our employees as to what the value is of having them in the building? And I think a lot of companies tend to, and management type people tend to leap to conclusions. They think they already know the answer. And so they don't really take time to listen. They will lecture their staff people on listening to customers, but then they won't actually listen to their staff people. They don't treat their employees the way they want them to treat their customers. And I think if you took that attitude and said, look, every day a salesperson has to make a sale to an ultimate customer. Every day a manager has to make the sale to the employee. How is it that we bring value to your life as an employee? Because right now, there are like 3 available jobs for every, or how does that stat go? There's a lot more available jobs than there are people who are trying to fill those jobs. And so these people can go anywhere. I don't think they're all sitting home on their tuchuses, taking the government tax dollars. I think a lot of them are basically saying, you know what, I could do something else. I could work for myself. And we also forget, I think, that this country was not built upon large industrial enterprises where everybody came together at one big factory and had to do everything in lockstep. In large part, this country was built by people who had small businesses. They were farmers, but they also ran other side businesses. They were, making socks in the evening or whatever. They were wheelwrights, and they were coopers, and they were people who were engaged in a trade. And that spirit, I think, has been rekindled by the COVID-19 shutdown limitations. And I think a lot of people are starting to say to themselves, you know what? I'm with these Apple people. I wouldn't write it in that mamby-pamby-pansy kind of virtue signaling way that they write it, but I don't want to sit in traffic and drive to work and then have some political garbage going on because somebody in that cubicle isn't doing what I like. I'm with Steve's wife, like I can get done in 4 hours, something that would take me 8 hours at the office because of the constant interruptions. There's some good business reasons for listening to your employees. I'm not saying you always agree with them, but I think a lot of these CEOs need to start looking around saying, gee, if we could reduce our floor plan footprint by 1 million square feet and still be as productive, maybe that ain't a bad idea.
Yeah.
Would have been nice if this happened before they built the structure.
Yeah.
It's a $5 billion office building.
Because the ring would be about an eighth of the size.
Yeah, it's ironic that the people who made this device that allow me to communicate instantly by video with anybody anywhere in the world said, hey, let's anchor something to a plot of land and make people drive to it.
This is where I'm going with it. If it had turned out you're right, they need to, instead of calling it the spaceship, they call it like the washer or something, be listening this tiny little thing here. Scott has really just hit a lot of the points that are really kind of salient here. Specifically with Apple, this magical dream facility is the events of COVID-19 have accelerated societal trends that have been in place and in motion and are unstoppable. And it was Thad McConnell who 10 years ago said, this is the end of the federal government, because with this, you can make your money from 15 different sources. If your hobby is making duck decoys, you can sell those to people in Argentina, all of it. I find it kind of ironic because, and also pretty easily explainable. This Apple complex was designed by a guy who grew up in a corporate culture, a guy like Steve Jobs, who basically had experience working with like companies like IBM and so on. He said to himself, what would the ideal office space look like? But that kind of thinking is the thinking that occurs right where we are now, which is at the seam between the industrial era and the information age. He was far enough ahead of his time in the industrial age to say, what would the ideal office look like, but not quite far enough into the information age to realize that the ideal office doesn't look like an office. There is no office. The ideal office is a virtual office. Never quite got there. So they built this $1 billion thing and so on. There's a strong case to be made for this word that has become it's been so badly overused. It's like, we'll make you a viral video for your cornflake company. But this idea of synergy is an important idea. And synergy is largely determined by accident and coincidence. And this is what Jobs was trying to do with this thing. He was trying to get somebody who had an idea about peanut butter and somebody had an idea about chocolate and have them bump into each other. And the next thing you know, you're in business. But unfortunately, the tidal forces that are pulling us apart are stronger than the ones that are pulling us together. And I said unfortunately, but that may not be the case. Centralization is the enemy of freedom, and so is complexity. We did a segment this week about the tax code, and complexity is the enemy of freedom because complexity allows bureaucrats and other officials to hide behind language that's not available to regular people, so you can't really have freedom. They've built this incredibly complex structure. Now they have a workforce that doesn't want to come and work in it. I'm sure Apple will find a way to adjust to this and so on. But I do find it somewhat ironic that this vision of the future, the physical manifestation of the high-tech future, this circular, green, billion-dollar facility is very likely going to look like the dead mall down at the end of the highway where before they put the freeway overpass in, you know? I wonder what they'll do with that circular space. Maybe they'll turn it into a skating rink or something. That would be interesting. The future is hard to predict because it hasn't happened yet. And this is something that even the most forward-thinking people on the planet, as the people of Apple like to think of themselves as, did not foresee, but which a rather unusual suspender-wearing conservative named Thad McConnell clearly did see. He saw it 10 years ago. And I don't think the future is turning out the way anybody thought it would, but I can tell you I am a little bit emotionally satisfied to find out that our high-tech overlords who sure they've got everything all figured out and the future's completely on their plan are facing an issue that they never expected to see. And that gives me even more hope for the future. For Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle coming to you live from the drop pod of BillWhittle.com, saying we'll see you next time right here on Right Angle.